Good morning. Morning, everybody. How are you, right? Good, excellent. You've all made it in. Right, welcome to the event. We're going to start and we're going to open with some opening remarks from our Managing Director. Please welcome James Smith.
Thank you very much, Rick. Hi, everyone. Welcome to TechSpace Shoreditch. I'm sure you'll agree it's a fantastic venue for this morning. I'm James, Managing Director of the Kite Factory, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the first in-person event we've hosted since 2019, the new era of measurement. And as an agency, measurement really is at the heart of what we do. Throughout what we've done as an agency, and we've grown over the last few years in terms of, we've gone all the way from sort of the more direct response linear measurement all the way through to econometric modeling and brand tracking. And at the Kite Factory, we really bridge the gap between media creativity and measurement, and I think that's really important for our clients. It's not just good ideas that we can't measure, it's good ideas that actually we make sure we can. And with ever complex customer journeys as well, I think it's going to be more important that we can measure those. And we've structured an integrated agency of 95 people now that can really balance the blend between creativity and that measurement. And today we'll show you how we're going to do this in a complex world of attribution. So I'm now going to hand over to Ben, our managing partner of digital, who'll introduce you to the morning's event and co-host you through the day. Thank you very much.
Right, hello everyone. So here's the agenda for today. I'm going to start with a view from the top. So I'll just do a bit of an intro, hopefully set up loads of the stuff that the rest of the panels and people will be talking about. So here we are. I don't think we can talk about measurement in isolation. I think it's too intrinsically linked in these three core areas, right? So obviously targeting, we're all trying to target our audience, we're all trying to target niche segments and look for traits and personas and things like that. It's all got a lot harder. It's all got a lot harder with things like the GDPR initially, now with cookies obviously being massively reduced in the digital space as well. And that whole measurement space with privacy coming to the fore, targeting our audience is getting harder and harder. Obviously then you've got measuring it. So one of the problems that we're facing now is if measurement is not robust, you could actually be running a really successful strategy, a really successful element of your campaign, but you can't actually measure it properly. You can't see that it's doing that because we're trying to measure it still in quite an old school way, in quite a linear way, in sort of methods and ways of working that just aren't appropriate anymore. We used to see, for example, that for a lot of our clients, you could almost, if you realised you weren't at the point of diminishing returns, you could spend more and there was a really strong correlation. You invested more against the right audience, you got more conversions, more sales, more donations, etc. You no longer see that correlation in that form of measurement anymore. You might do in the raw back-end data, but not that. So that's really interesting. And both of those two things obviously then ladder up to actual performance. And if you think in a world where we're using increasing amounts of technology, increasing amounts of AI, etc., to automate these things, if they have less data points, they're not making robust decisions. You're just putting less information into that technology. It makes more knee-jerk decisions. It doesn't make the right decisions in terms of your budget allocation, etc. So the performance is actually damaged by the lack of those data points, the lack of measurement as well. So these things so intrinsically linked. Obviously we're here to talk about measurement, but you can't just think of that on its own. So if you've got a challenge with all of this measurement, then I think essentially you've got two possible mindsets that you could approach this with. The first one is just mitigate the risk. How do I keep doing what I've always been doing? How do I maybe look at a new data source, new bit of tech, etc., that enables me to work in exactly the same way as I've done for the last few years? But actually, we're at this point where everything is changing so much that we could actually use this change and turn it into a massive opportunity, because this is a chance to actually reset and refresh things. And I understand that this is actually happening at a non-ideal time, right? Because the economic climate is already tough and probably going to get tougher. And obviously we know that marketing budgets come under pressure. When they come under pressure, you have to answer increasingly to a CFO, someone like that, who wants to look at a number. How much should I put in? How much should I get out? So it's not, to be honest, happening at the ideal time, because really what we want to be doing is resetting, refreshing the way that we think, the way that we work, rather than just trying to bodge and keep doing the way that we've done it for the last few years. So rather than think of it as, how do we get through this, and there's loads of challenges here, actually, I think we can start turning that on its head and thinking of the opportunities that are created. And here are the 5 opportunities that I'm going to quickly talk through. I think we can reach neglected audiences. We can extend to wider audiences than we have done before. I think there's fewer barriers to innovation, less restrictive KPIs that we're all being held to, and we can create deeper partnerships. So I'm going to talk about those 5 things now. So the first one, reaching neglected audiences. So I'm stealing this very much from Alan, who's on the next panel. But if you think of it from the way that we use cookies at the moment in the digital world, that obviously, as you know, all Safari browsers, all the stuff that's owned by Apple is really starting to block all those cookies. It doesn't drop them in the same way. It doesn't track them in the same way. So if you tell a piece of technology, can you drive as many conversions for me as possible for my budget? Here's the audience, here's all the data. Where's it going to spend the money? It's going to spend it on the devices where it can measure and track it properly. So even though you haven't told it to, subconsciously, essentially, by running things in that way and being reliant on cookies, you are diverting all of your spend into Android mobile devices and onto browsers, etc., where the cookies actually work. So there is a ginormous audience, could be 50% of the audience, could be more if you're targeting an affluent audience, that are being completely neglected because the spend is not flowing towards that audience at all. And then with some of our partners that we've been working with, they ask us, how are you measuring this? Are you using an ad server? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And if we're working in a certain way with our clients, they say, right, we're going to exclude anyone that is on any form of Safari browser from that campaign because we will drive loads of conversions we can track, but you won't give us the credit. So again, this is a real opportunity here. If you move into a more cookieless way of working, you will automatically reach this audience that have not been served media anywhere near the same way as the audience on Android devices. I think the next one is extending to wider audiences as well. I do think that we have been slightly over-optimizing and looking at more and more niche segments and how do I get more personas and more traits and more signals that this is my target audience, hyper-targeting of that audience and those segments, right? And to such a degree that actually there is quite a long tail. You know, if you look at it almost as a bullseye, there is perfectly profitable audiences there that aren't right in the middle, aren't your core audience. I mean, this is an example that our investment director, Jonathan Leach, always talks about. He says, you know, when Pampers go on TV, they're showing loads of ads to people who don't even have kids. You know, loads of people who are way too young. But when those people get a little bit older, what's the first brand that they all think about? Most people would say that was wasted spend because it wasn't against the target audience of someone that was either planning to or just had kids. Actually, it wasn't because in the longer term, it paid off. And then fewer barriers to innovation as well. So in terms of innovation at the moment, I think that at the moment, the way that we are forced to measure things in quite a linear way, in quite an ROI way, etc., very much what did I put in, what did I get out? And then a lot of you probably as marketeers have an innovation pot to do something cool with, and it's not very big, and you can't do what you want to do with it. Well, of course, if the measurement goes away and the performance drops off a little bit in traditional channels, like we are seeing some of the things that have been our banker activity for a while, then actually the need for innovation becomes greater and the barrier comes down. And you can do way more stuff where it's not just how much did that cost, what was the ROI of it? And again, this is an example stolen very much from Rick, who always talks about this. BBC's Dracula poster, award-winning. You know, it was one site, and it didn't actually cost them a lot. If someone said, what's the ROI on that, they wouldn't be able to tell you, but it was a massive success. You know, it's absolutely everywhere. And then in terms of less restrictive KPIs, if you can't measure it as accurately to an ROI, to a CPA, all that kind of stuff, it's going to help us move up the funnel a little bit more. It's going to reallocate that spend a little bit more in terms of stuff that we can measure. We do know it has a business impact if we change prompted, unprompted awareness. If we get people to engage with our content in a quality way, data capture, things like that. So I think that opens up brand new channels and brand new ways of buying. This is an example from one of our partners, Sage and Archer, and they ran this programmatic out of home for Heineken post-COVID. Basically, the campaign was send us a picture of you drinking Heineken in your local, and then they dynamically pulled that creative into local out-of-home sites. Here's your nearest local, here's someone enjoying their beer. You know, again, could Heineken track every single beer sale that they got from it? Or was it more them supporting the wider industry, yeah, and getting people back into pubs? Yeah, but massively successful. And I do think that this is another opportunity for us to move up into that consideration, not necessarily pure brand or anything like that, more in that consideration, engagement, middle phase. And the last thing is creating deeper partnerships. I think that to do this, we do need to start planning earlier. We can't you can't work on last-minute briefs and sprinting from one campaign to the next. I know it's really, really hard because quite often we're all waiting for budget sign-off and all kinds of things, which is why things are done in the times they are. But if we can start planning earlier, and we can start going way deeper into the partnerships with media owners and things like that. So we'll think about owned, earned, shared, paid. Got it in, Rick. In terms of, I'm sure you've heard that a lot from us as an agency, right? But not just thinking of the paid execution, thinking of all the stuff that comes around that. So, you know, with this example, obviously, as you can see here, guide dogs, they got a couple of puppies that were going through their training on this morning. You had all of the TV spots that then obviously around that in terms of the paid, but then you had all the social, everything else around it. Massively successful for getting that, you know, getting not just awareness out there, but actual sort of sponsorship of puppies as well. But it's not just this form of partnership. Think of your media partners. They have huge quantities of data, quality second-party data. You can't go out there anymore and buy this stuff off the shelf and say somebody is, you know, likely to be a donor. Someone's likely to buy a flight and go on holiday to this place. The quality of that's going down. The audience sizes are going down. So the second-party data owned by the media owners is really powerful. That's where you can get some really cool stuff. You can start thinking about how you integrate that data and work together in a true partnership. So those were my five things. Hopefully you found them useful and stuff, and I'll be hanging around afterwards if you've got any questions.